Wake up, Twins territory. You are listening to Twins Hangouts with Jeremy Nygaard and Seth Stowes. If you are viewing live, thanks a lot. If you're downloading later, thanks a bunch. Seth, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. I mowed a little bit of lawn, and that's about it. Watch some baseball, listen to some Fort Myers Miracle playoff baseball. Kind of paying attention to the Cedar Rapids Colonels playoff game. Watching the Twins kind of in a rain delay, but it sounds like that weather that's hitting Minneapolis or just past Minneapolis is headed towards you.
Yep. In a little weather watch here until the middle of the night. So if you're listening live and everything goes away, it's probably because the power went out. So hopefully we can avoid that at least until after the show. But let's get right into things. Our goal is to roll about 60 minutes, which is shorter than what we've done in the past. Obviously, you can find this on iTunes. You can find this on our Libsyn page. You can find it all on Twins Daily. So give us feedback on Twitter on Twins Daily. Tell us you like us, tell us you hate us, whatever it is. That we're poll ads. If that's what you feel like saying, that works too. So let's get right into it. The calendar has turned from August to September, which last year meant some August trade deals. We didn't have any of those, but we have had some September call-ups. To kind of prelude the call-ups, there was a kind of I don't know if I would say curious move, but one that kind of caught me off guard, and I believe it was Saturday after the game. The Twins lost Sam Deduno on outright waivers to the Houston Astros, which opened up at the time, I want to say, a fourth 40-man roster spot.
Yeah, I believe that's the case because they filled that one, and then we'll talk later about three guys I think they added to the 40-man roster for September.
Yeah, so they get rid of guy number 37 on the 40-man and allegedly guy number 25 on the 25-man, Sam Deduno. What does the loss of Sam Deduno do for you?
I mean, it's not painful by any means, but it was just the timing was really weird, and the fact that they put him on outright waivers instead of the revocable waivers that pretty much everybody goes through in September. Of course, we don't know if he had already been on revocable waivers and they'd revoked him, or pulled him back. It's just curious that they wouldn't have just tried to do that and see if they could get even a player to be named later or something for him. He had decent ability to miss bats. I think he struggled at times, but when you consider he was signed 3 years ago on a minor league contract, if you're looking for a positive of the Rick Anderson regime, maybe he's one of them because I think he was better than anyone could have anticipated, in a couple of different roles.
Yeah, I always liked Deduno. I don't know exactly where his role as a major leaguer is, if it's even as a major leaguer, but he was interesting to watch, and maybe part of it for me was watching how good he was in the WBC, and always showing all the emotion that he did was just it made it easy to like him, but it made it really frustrating when he would just be brutal. So I thought he was good in the bullpen, but looking forward, I don't know that he necessarily was needed in the bullpen. So getting rid of him, I guess, doesn't do much for me. The whole process of how it happened, I thought was kind of peculiar. But, that led to the next move, which for me is even more strange, and that was purchasing the contract of left-handed relief pitcher Aaron Thompson from Rochester to fill the 25th spot and now the 37th spot of the 40-man roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think to summarize my Deduno thoughts, I enjoyed watching him too. He was fun. He missed bats. He gave you the what could happen today, but I think he wasn't going to be back next year. Aaron Thompson was really peculiar to me when I saw that in part. In fact, I think I tweeted something like, "Oh, they're calling up Rochester's fifth or sixth best bullpen arm." which was kind of, I guess, snarky in a way. And yet, with Rochester at that time still being in a playoff run, going with just 2 games left in their season, you can understand not taking the Tonkins or Octers or even Oliveros or a couple of their other guys, or Darnell, a few of those other guys away. So, I mean, Tom's clearly made an impression in spring training. And let's not forget Terry Ryan was just out there last week for about a week. So most likely he saw him pitch real well, and his numbers would indicate that, and showed that he could get some people out. And I think that's probably a combination of those things is why he got the call.
Yeah, my response, my Twitter deal after it happened was I think it was Rhett that announced it, or he was the first one that had it, and I retweeted with the comment dumb, because that's what I thought it was. I thought it was dumb. If you're gonna call them up, wait until rosters expand, and then it wouldn't look as bad, I don't think. When they signed Thompson to a minor league deal, I think on Twitter I said something about he could compete for Dunsing's spot, never expecting him to actually compete, but just having another lefty in that type of role that can get left-handers out, which he does pretty well. Uh, I just don't understand why the timing of those moves were made when they were made, and that's what it was for me. It, it didn't make sense, and to lose DeDuno for Thompson, who will be outrighted at the end of the year anyway, and elect free agency and may or may not resign. It just it didn't really add up. But in the grand scheme of things, guys at the bottom of your 40-man roster, they're expendable 24 hours a day anyway, which
Yeah.
DeDuno
And,
was and Thompson is.
and
So I mean, maybe we don't get hung up on it.
well, and we've talked about that too before with kind of flip flopping and moving guys around at the bottom of the 40 man. I understand it to some degree, but again, like you said, the timing, when you consider Thompson wasn't going to get there until you know, the day before, like August 31st. And so you really were only getting one day, and one day later you could have had both of them and kept both of them. I mean, maybe that's where it ties into the wanting to call up some other guys and see them rather than see more of the because they did add more and they filled up the 40-man roster. So apparently they needed all of those spaces.
Right. Uh, yeah, but at the end of the day, I guess 39, 40 on the roster. No, looking forward to the future, knowing neither of them are going to be on. Maybe it's not as big of a deal as I guess I thought, but who really cares about
But
Aaron Thompson or Sam Deduno going into the offseason?
but at the same time, I mean, Thompson's been in the organization now 2 years. I don't know that we know that Brian Dunsing is going to be back next year. I mean, I would certainly tender him a contract. He's not going to make more than $3 million, and he's been really good this year. But he's a non-tender, probably not a non-tender, but certainly a trade candidate. And Aaron Thompson, I think, is still only 27, and he's left-handed. He's a former first-round pick. He has pitched in the big leagues previously. He can get lefties out. I think he throws a little bit harder. He is a guy that I think they will pay close attention to this offseason. I don't expect them to keep him on the 40-man roster, but if he has one of those really solid months, it wouldn't shock me because they have had success picking up some of these minor league guys in that 27, 28 range, and this guy's got some first round pedigree that maybe they think he has a chance.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't keep him on the 40-man roster.
I mean, I probably wouldn't either, but I think that you got 30 games. He could, realistically get into 10 to 12 games, and maybe he makes another good impression. We don't want to make too much of what happens in September, good or bad, but I mean, it does get seen, and it does get seen more importantly by the more important people who make those types of decisions. So, I mean, it isn't completely out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and part of me wonders too, like what the conversations are between the Twins and the agents. If there's dialogue about whether they're interested in returning. as a minor league free agent. If the Twins went to Aaron Thompson and said, we'd like to keep you around after you hit free agency, and obviously there's nothing that you can sign or agree on. But if you do something like this to entice a guy to stay in the organization, I don't know if that's something that you would even bother with, but is that out of the question?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly possible. I mean we don't know the behind the scenes types of things. Maybe Deduno wanted an opportunity. Obviously, he got claimed. There's other teams that believe he can be something. And that team being Houston, the Astros in this case. But yeah, I mean I'm sure there's more to it. I think to summarize, the timing was strange. Deduno's probably been better than we could have thought. Aaron Thompson was an interesting choice to say the least. And at the end of the year, it's probably much ado about nothing.
Right, right. Agreed. So let's talk about what happened the next day when the Twins recalled Michael Tonkin, Logan Darnell, Josmiel Pinto, Chris Herman, Aaron Hicks, and purchased the contracts of Lester Oliveros, your guy, AJ Ochter, and Doug Bernier. Let's talk about
Yeah,
it.
I mean, where do we start?
Let's start with Tonkin.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, let's look back at last week. We talked about the guys we both felt were givens, and I didn't write them down, but maybe you did. But I mean, Tonkin, Josemiel Pinto, and Aaron Hicks. I think both of us thought all three of those guys were
Right.
were pretty much given. Tonkin has had a good year at Rochester, no question. I mean, he's still throwing hard. He's made one appearance with the Twins since he's been back. Looks like he's throwing from a slightly different angle, and he's got a sharp breaking ball. It could have just been one night, but I mean, he does look a little bit better. So I mean, no surprise with Tonkin whatsoever.
Right. And I guess for me it was Tonkin or Pryor. I'm not looking at my sheet exactly, but I thought it'd be one or the other. Um, I guess they decided that Pryor needed to. They didn't want to push him after coming back from the surgery. So if that's the case, then adding Tonkin's a pretty easy call. Um, Next was Logan Darnell, who I believe we both had as guys that were definitely coming up. Uh, for
Right,
me,
no question there.
for me, I thought if it's Darnell, it's not going to be Chris Johnson. Not that it couldn't be Chris Johnson, but for whatever reason they decided on Darnell, which is perfectly fine. The other two pitchers that they added were two guys that were not previously on the 40-man roster, and that was Lester Oliveros and AJ Ochter.
Yeah, and I mean, both of them had to be added, which is why maneuvering had to be done on the 40-man roster. And one we didn't talk about was, I think it was on Sunday, possibly even Monday, the Twins outrighted Edgar Ibarra off of their 40-man roster, and he wasn't claimed, so he goes back to that New Britain roster, which of course their season is over, and he becomes a free agent right after the World Series. So, but anyway, Lester Oliveros, I know I had as a given with how well he's pitched, especially the last month and a half in Rochester. Coming back, really his first full season back from Tommy John surgery. Obviously had a rough outing in his first outing back with the big leagues, giving up a couple of home runs. But, I mean, you can see the velocity. You can see the smooth delivery. Clearly just needs to throw more strikes than he did last night. And then, to me, the story is absolutely AJ Actor. I mean, it's kind of cool. He's the one guy out of the 8 who has never been in the big leagues. This is his first promotion. He was a 46th round pick. He was the choice I made for relief pitcher of the year. I guess it's been 2 years ago, but he was the runner-up last year, and the first half of this year was tremendous. He'd struggled a little bit towards the second half, but he might be another guy with Terry Ryan down there. He's thrown real well the last week, and he's getting an opportunity. So to me, that's just a great story. Whether or not these guys pan out, we don't know. Sometimes it's just a good story, and sometimes a guy gets a chance and kind of runs with it. So, it'll be interesting to see how this works out for those two non-roster guys. Were you surprised by either one of them?
Ochter kind of that surprised me. He was passed over for the 40-man last year, had a good season again this year. Started the year, I believe, in Double A. So it made you wonder what the Twins really thought about him. 46th round pick that came from Michigan State and was a junior. And it's interesting because I don't have bonus information for
Hey
him.
Jeremy, I've got someone coming to my house. I'm going to be right back. So talk a little.
That's what happens with live podcasting here. Uh, he was a 46 round pick out of Michigan State, was a junior, and was expected to be the guy that came back as a senior and pitched for the Spartans in the Big Ten, uh, but decided for whatever reason to sign. Now it made me think, maybe the Twins had some money available that they paid him more than a typical 46 rounder would get. Uh, but has had success, so shouldn't be too surprising. I wonder if this is going to be more of an audition, a 1 month long audition to see if he should keep this 40-man roster spot. And I kind of feel the same way about Oliveros as well. Last night gave up, I believe, 3 runs in that 10th inning, 2 home runs, opposite field home runs to right-handed hitters, and the Twins have a lot of prospects that could really be classified as relief pitchers. So it makes you think that maybe they just want to see what they have in some of these guys. Obviously, I don't believe the Twins will push the prospects that they have coming up. But if you get a look at Oliveros, get a look at Thompson, get a look at AJ Octor to kind of see if any of these guys fit into their plans in the major leagues or potentially, again, Rochester, that it'll help form that blueprint going into the offseason. Not that I think the Twins are going to go into the free agent market looking for relief pitchers, but they have the potential in the future to have the makings of a pretty good bullpen. Seth, are you
Yeah, I'm
back?
back.
You're back, huh?
Yeah, I'm back. I mean, there's definitely an opportunity for with some of these guys we're seeing right now, but also you look towards Birdie and Jake Reed and Mason Militakis. They've definitely got some power arms that have a chance to be really good.
Right, Zach Jones included.
Absolutely. I mean, he pitched again tonight on back-to-back nights, throws in the mid 90s. It's good to see. I mean, it's pretty exciting to think that we could get back to a point where if a starter can go 6 innings, and if a starter can go 6 innings, I think Twins fans would be happy with that at this point. Um, you feel pretty good about your chances of winning.
Yeah, for sure. Um, let's talk a little bit about the hitters. Obviously, we thought Josmil Pinto and Aaron Hicks would be added. Hicks is they're both making their first starts since being recalled. Pinto at catcher, Hicks at center. The other 2 guys that were added were Chris Herman and Doug Bernier. Uh, do you think, whether or not the recall affects your decision at all, do you think Chris Herman survives the winter on the 40-man roster?
I think the recall tells us that they like him. He's really played well in August and late July in AAA, but I don't know. I really don't. I mean, maybe if Pinto plays really poorly or that type of thing. The fact is they're going to want a third catcher that they feel comfortable with at AAA, and whether that's Fryer or if that's Herman, I think that at least one of them will be back. I would guess not both of them. So I don't know if that's going to be Herman's value is that he can play both corner outfield positions, which is the only place he's actually played in the big leagues this year. So, I mean, I'm maybe 50-50 on him being on the 40 roster at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that Fryer makes it through, because I think they probably value his defense a little bit more. I I know how much they value versatility, or at least how much Gardy and Terry Ryan value versatility. So, if Gardy's around, I think that Herman probably sticks. Um, but again, I don't know how much influence Gardy would have if he sticks around on the makings of the roster. But that could be a conversation we could have either later tonight, if we have time, or maybe next week. Um, Doug Bernier, what does that do for you?
I mean, I think it's good. I mean, it was kind of him or James Beresford or Pedro Florimon. I think Bernier was the most deserving. I think it's telling that Florimon didn't get called up. I would have loved to have seen Beresford too, but if you look at the numbers and go by that, I mean, Bernier deserves it. And also with what they're doing, with Santana going to be at shortstop more, with Plouffe and Escobar and Dozier, kind of going to get plenty of playing time. You got Nunez. Simply, I don't think Bernier's going to play a whole lot, but it's still nice to have that depth there, which is why I think it's, a lot of people have talked about Jorge Polanco getting called up, but, you want him to play or to rest or that kind of thing. He's had a long, good year, but Bernier, I think, just has kind of earned it.
Yeah, I have no problem with Bernier coming up, but let's go back to what you just said there. You said a lot of people wanted Polanco called up. And then what was the next thing you said? He should either play or rest. Yes?
It's kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum,
Right.
right?
There's nothing that he's doing right now that he couldn't be doing with the Twins while getting instruction from Paul Molitor on base running, on whoever would help him with infield stuff, which would help. Right now what he's doing is not playing, which I think he's on the instructional league list, which reports in a week, right?
Right. We could,
So,
yeah, the 15th or something.
yeah, I thought I saw the 12th. But if it's the 12th, fine. And if their thing is, well, we wanted to get him down and get him a full deal of instructional league, I get that. And that would be very easy for someone to say, like Terry Ryan. We didn't call Polanco up because, we really like him. We want him to get 3 extra weeks playing shortstop, which he couldn't get if he was up on the bench for the big team. That's fine. But his quote was him not being ready. That's BS to me because they don't need to be ready if they're a September call-up. They don't need to be a prospect. They don't need to be someone that needs to play every day. You're calling him up to the same reason that you called him up earlier in the year, because you can. Well, they had to before, but you called him up. He was okay. He wasn't over his head, and he can get better instruction, or at least he can get additional instruction, being with the major league staff that now he's not getting because I'm guessing he is back. Well, maybe he's back in Fort Myers. It just didn't make sense to me that you wouldn't call the guy up for 28 days, give him a couple at bats a week, get him with the big league staff, and just get him continuing to play ball. And obviously, he's going to go to instructional league. He's going to go to Venezuela and play every day. He's going to get a month off and come to spring training and play every day and then play all year. I mean, he's going to play year-round because that's what he does. I just don't like the fact that he just wasn't called up because Terry Ryan says, quote, he wasn't ready.
Well, I mean, sure, that's, nice to say, but you know what? I mean, Max Kepler could come up too then next week. I mean, why not just add all 40? At the end of the day, it's a numbers game. And, it is what it is.
You don't add Kepler because he proved that he wasn't ready by the way that he played for a majority of the year. And he's going to Arizona, so you can't call him up.
Well, you can call him up and then send him later, but, plus they're in the Florida State League playoffs. But, yeah, it is what it is. Nobody calls up 8 or 9 or 10 guys. They just don't. The Twins actually called up 8 or 7 or 8, which is a lot. So, the clubhouse is only so big. All those excuses, but I don't think it's a big deal. He's probably back in the Dominican, relaxing and getting ready for the Dominican Winter League, where he's going to play another 60 games.
Dominican, my bad. I said Venezuela, I think. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I get it. But if you said, hey, we're calling up 8 guys, he would have been one of the 8 that I would have said is most deserving of those spots.
I guess he's hitting 260 and not doing a whole lot at Double-A, so I thought it was a pretty easy choice not to bring him up.
Are you looking?
It doesn't make him less of a prospect, but I don't think it's a big deal there.
Are you looking at his Double-A stats right now?
No.
I don't think he's hitting 260 at Double A.
Okay.
I think he's batting like 280, but batting well lately.
Okay.
I think I mean, it's not worth arguing about, but he batted 291 in Fort Myers and 281 in New Britain. Over the course of the year, batted 288 with a 353 OBP and a 750 OPS. And
Yep.
he's probably going to be the Twins minor league hitter of the year. Wouldn't you think?
Could be. I mean, he's certainly a candidate. If he wins it, that's not a very good year for the Twins minor league hitters, but I mean, it's a good year.
Well,
especially for a middle infielder.
Who would be a better candidate? Totally off topic. Who would win that award?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he's right there. I mean, 750 OPS is certainly not terrible, but I mean, there's non-prospects, quote unquote, that probably deserve it a little bit more.
Yeah, but you're not going to give the award to someone that's not going to be around in the organization for the Diamond Awards in January.
Ideally, yeah, that's true.
I mean, I guess Albers won an award and then was, sold a week later. But yeah, Ronaldo Rodriguez was probably better this year. Doug Bernier would probably be better, but I don't know that the Twins have ever given that award to someone that's not a prospect.
Brian Busher won it one year.
Okay, fine. You got one.
I don't know. I mean, he had a 665 OPS in Double A. I mean, 37 games only, but I mean, I don't know. To me, it's a non-issue.
It's pouring at my house right now. Absolutely pouring. So I can't promise good audio because I can't promise the internet's working well because the satellite's not working at all. So hopefully you guys can hear this.
Well, let's fly through here a little bit and just see what we come up with and try to be done in about even 15 minutes. How about?
Okay.
Think we can do it?
No.
Neither do I.
We can certainly give it a shot, though. Okay, let me get back to my page here. We talked about the call-ups. Let's talk a little bit about the minor leagues. I did the report on Monday and got to write about Rochester being eliminated. So their season ended, and then their guys were called up on the 2nd. New Britain actually finished really well and had a record that would have competed for a wild card spot had they been in the other division in the Eastern League. So that's promising, but they missed the playoffs. And the GCL Twins and the DSL Twins, those seasons were done before the weekend. So that leaves 3 other teams. Why don't you give us a little rundown on those teams?
Well, let's start with Elizabethton. They were in the Appalachian League tournament, I guess, playing in the semifinals against Johnson City. A couple of pretty evenly matched teams. I know in Game 1 on Sunday, they went, I think, 11 or 13 innings, and Trey Vavra knocked in the game-winning runs. I think they won 8-7. The next day in Game 2, the E-Twins lost. And then prior to Game 3, the deciding game, we learned that Nick Gordon broke a finger, or at least a bone in his finger, and I think it was his index finger. But he would be unable to play, and he's probably going to miss Instructional League as well. But they went out and they lost to Johnson City, and that ended their season. So the E-Twins had another strong season, but fell in the first round of the playoffs. Johnson City advancing.
Yeah, that was, I followed it as closely as I could. I actually remember as this was going on, I remembered, prior to the first day of school a couple years ago, I stayed up later than I wanted to stay up listening to Elizabethton make a miraculous comeback in the Appy League playoffs that I believe did it end on a DJ Hicks grand slam after Adam Walker home run tied it up.
Yeah, and Adam Walker 3-run homer tied it up in the bottom of the ninth, and then I think it was the bottom of the 11th or 12th. Dalton Hicks came up with the bases loaded and hit a home run to win it.
Yeah, it's good. That was a fun little time. Okay, so they're done. Gordon, I believe, even tweeted that he's back in Orlando already. So,
Okay.
yeah,
It,
I mean, I think they'll still have him in Fort Myers, to my understanding. He just won't be able to participate.
right.
Okay, so that's
Right. You
one
know,
team.
it's as soon as those seasons finish, they get those players back home. You know, because they'll have about 2 weeks here, or a little over a week before many of them come back for instructional week.
Right. Okay, so one team that would you say that they exceeded expectations in Elizabethton?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think coming into the year, we didn't know a whole lot of what would happen. I think, Gonsalves was their opening day starter. Louis Thorpe was probably ticketed there. Fernando Romero was probably ticketed there. Felix Jorge was starting the season in Cedar Rapids, and he came back, ended up being the Appalachian League Pitcher of the Year. So, I mean, I think we thought there would be some good pitching, but most of those either got hurt or moved up. But they found some guys in like Sam Gibbons. Matt Batts certainly while he was there did well. And then the current draft picks, Cedar had his moments, but John Curtis was very good. So I think they were pretty okay. They had a lot of college hitters, meaning they were a pretty veteran offensive team. So I don't know if they overperformed, but I think they were expected to be pretty good.
Yeah, and they always are good because I think the perception is that they have a older team than most, but I don't even know that that's true.
I don't think that's true. I think that there's, and I don't remember what team it is, but the Kansas City Royals, that's their lowest affiliate. It's the equivalent for them as the GCL is. So there's a lot of 17 and 18-year-old Royals prospects that are getting their first taste of pro ball in the Appalachian League, which is a huge step. But, I do think that the rest of the teams are all pretty similar in age.
Right. Okay, so that team's done. What else we got going on?
Well, I'm going to jump to Fort Myers because they did win, their first game yesterday in the playoffs. It was a good game. They got a strong start, but then the bullpen or they actually didn't get a strong start. Brett Lee gave up 7 runs in 1 inning. It was actually in the second inning, but none of them were earned because of 3 errors. But then Brandon Peterson came in and threw 2 1/3 scoreless innings, and then there was a quick rain delay, and then they came with Nick Birdie for the 8th and Zach Jones for the 9th, and they were able to win game 1. The big hits there were Jason Kanzler. He had a 2-run double in the second inning, and then in the 4th inning he hit a grand slam. So he had double and a homer and 6 RBIs early in the game. And after the rain delay, it was tied at 7, and Dalton Hicks had an RBI single to give the Miracle the lead, and they held on with their bullpen. So that brought up tonight where they played Bradenton again, and it was kind of a interesting game. They fell behind 1-0 in the third. DJ Baxendale gave up an unearned run, but then in the bottom of the third, they got some big hits. Travis Harrison hit a shot off the top of the Green Monster at JetBlue Stadium. So he drove in 2. That made it 4-1. And then the next batter was Dalton Hicks, and he hit an 0-2 pitch over the wall in right field. A 2-run homer made it 6-1. That score lasted until the 9th when Zach Jones came on again, and he did give up 1 run. But the Miracle swept the series 2-0 with a 6-2 win tonight. Mejia, Harrison, Kepler, they all had 2 hits, and obviously the big hit was the Dalton Hicks home run. Baxendale was the story too, though. He got the win. 7 innings, 6 hits, 1 walk. The 1 run was unearned. He struck out 5. Todd Van Steensel was back on the mound again, where he pitched another scoreless inning, and he did as he did the night before. And then Zach Jones got the final out. So the Miracle advance. I haven't looked yet. I think Daytona was winning. If Daytona wins, that series starts tomorrow, which is Thursday at JetBlue Stadium. Obviously, the Miracle are playing at JetBlue because there's a lot of renovations going on at Hammond Stadium that are finishing up here. So they're playing all their playoff games at JetBlue. But the Florida State League Championship game probably starting Thursday for the Miracle. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, hey, how good of a story is the Jason Kanzler deal? I mean, he went from starting the season in extended spring to being a injury replacement for Cedar Rapids relatively early in that season. I don't think it was opening day, but I want to say it was within that first week. And then heading up to Fort Myers, where he has been better. I'm not looking at the stats, but I want to say he's been better statistically in Fort Myers than he was in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers, but he has kind of, at least at the very worst, held his own, kept those same types of numbers going, and really proving that he was ready for that level, which I don't think is all that surprising. Obviously, defensively, we would both agree that he's ready to play it probably even at higher levels. But offensively, I think he's cut down his strikeout rate a little bit and used his speed, which he's got a lot of.
Yeah. Okay, so we got one team moving on. What do we know about the Colonels?
Well, their game one of the Midwest League playoffs just concluded, and they fell 2-0 to Burlington. But they did get good pitching. Chiwei Hu started. I know they're concerned about a lot of the innings on their starters. Steve Boer wrote about that at Twins Daily last week. But Chiwei Hu got the start, and he threw 5 shutout innings, striking out 7. Chris Mazza came on, and in an inning and 2/3 gave up 2 runs, 1 in each the 6th and the 7th inning. And then Dallas Gallant came on and threw 2 1/3 hitless innings with 4 strikeouts. Just not a lot of offense, obviously, in a shutout. They had 7 hits. Alex Swim had 2. Max Murphy had 2. But there really wasn't a lot of offense, unfortunately. And Mitch Garver is maybe the story of that game. He was replaced by Michael Quesada as a pinch hitter later in the game. Sounds like he took quite a few fall tips off the face mask, and hopefully there's nothing to be nothing to worry about there, hopefully.
Yeah, it sounds like they had a chance for a rally, had 2 hits in the 9th, but one was a double play and the other one was followed by the strikeout to end it. So kind of a bummer, but the interesting thing with Cedar Rapids is the pitching, even though it wasn't necessarily the pitching that we all expected it to be, or at least not the pitchers that we expected them to be, have kept them in games even when the offense hasn't been good, but the offense has been really better than expected, and Max Murphy's a stud, so I mean, what else is there to say?
Well, especially in the second half, they've kind of taken off. I mean, Garver's been good all year, but Christensen, Kanzler before he moved up, Alex Swim's done nothing but hit since July started, and I mean, it's a good team. And again, Matt Batts is a guy. He's going to start tomorrow in Game 2 against Burlington, and he's already thrown about 160 innings on the season, so I'm sure they'll be watching him a little bit. Gonsalves has been pretty good other than one start right before the end of the season. Thorpe has been very good aside from all the walks. So they're actually a pretty young staff, but they have done a really nice job. And frankly, Ryan Eads, who's had a tough first pro season, has been very good the last month. In fact, in August, he went 3-0 with a 2.86 ERA, and opponents hit just 253 off of him. So he even finally started showing some strides as well.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting because Monday was when he pitched, and as I was writing the report, they didn't have his stats updated on the internet, so I was waiting to make the comparison between the first half and the second half, and then Eric Pleiss had to go and ruin it and talk all about it on Twitter. And kind of stole my thunder there. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of the Pleiss brothers, man, tonight they were really jinxing Trevor May like crazy, talking about how he was turning around, and then immediately I think the second batter hit a 2-run homer off of him. So, I'd tend to blame them a little bit for some
They
of the
should be.
struggles here of
They
late.
should probably be blamed for a lot of things that go wrong.
Well, I mean that's generally I think that would be our theory here at Twins Hangout.
Right. So if we're talking about how they screw things up tonight, then they're probably going to talk about how they screw things up tomorrow, right?
I would assume so, and we'll probably listen to it the next day.
Yeah, for sure. Um, we did have one viewer question, and I'm just going to ask that quick while it's still fresh in my mind, even though now I don't know where it went. It was a question about Nick Birdie and how he fits into. I don't want to say it was necessarily the plans. It was a question from Tony Myers that said, "We saw Nick Birdie on our minor league vacation tour of the Midwest League this summer and came away impressed. What do you think the plan is for him in the next year or two?"
I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, with some organizations, he would probably be up at opening day next year potentially. The Twins are known typically for being a little bit slower, especially with pitchers, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, and there's no official way of determining whether it's good or bad. Um, but I mean, he's a guy that I think could move up really quick. I mean, other than his first outing in the Midwest League, he was dominant there, and he hasn't. I don't think he's given up a run in Florida State League in 8 or 9 games either. So I could definitely see him. I think starting next year at Double A New Britain. And if they have a need, I could see them calling him right up from Double A. I mean, if they don't have a need, maybe they give him 15 outings or a month and a half in Double A and then a month in Triple A and call him up in July. I mean, I don't think it's going to take real long. Obviously, pending health and development. I mean, if people think he's a final product, he can still get better, which is pretty exciting even more. Jeremy, I last night when I was posting on Twitter, the idea of Birdie in the eighth and Zach Jones in the ninth as the Twins tandem at the end of games was pretty exciting. And now I posted that on Twitter as saying that would be pretty exciting for the Twins in a few years. Well, I got two different sides of response to that. Number one was don't tell Glenn Perkins, and
Right.
number two was why don't they trade Glenn Perkins? And I guess I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, first of all, my overwhelming thought is let's let those guys get there and become what Glenn Perkins is before we worry about dealing Glenn Perkins. My second thought is this. What's wrong with having more good bullpen arms? I don't get why having a few guys that could be good in a couple of years or even next year coming up really has anything to do with Perkins because there's 7, sometimes 8 guys in the bullpen. You can have more than 1 or 2 really good ones.
Right. Well, I don't think the argument should be the Twins should trade Glenn Perkins because Nick Birdie. The argument should have been a long time ago. The Twins should explore trading a closer because they're a 90-loss team. And then Perkins came out and basically gave the Twins, the old clearance rate on his service, and that's why you don't trade him.
Right.
Um, I've talked to some of the people I work with are part of the older generation, the generation that really droid, huh?
Yeah.
Really think the closer should be a role, and I think the closer should not even the save stat has ruined. That's not really ruined it because they never really. I mean, I didn't live during the time that they didn't use the closer, but if you have a left-handed relief pitcher that's your best relief pitcher and it's a one-run game and there's a guy on second base and there's a left-hander coming up, bring in your best relief pitcher to get that guy out.
Right.
Because it's the most, high leverage or however you want to call it, the situation that calls for your best pitcher. And they don't do it that way. So my whole thing with having a proven closer is you want the best arms, but let's not line them up so the best guy's at the back. Let's line them up so the best guy's the one that you're bringing out to get the outs. Because if your offense scores 2 more runs, then you don't need as good of pitchers, closing out the games. So, I guess my whole theory and my whole feelings and all the arguments that I would make have less to do with who Glenn Perkins is and more with how he's used. And yeah, Nick Birdie would be great, but I have no problem if you have Nick Birdie and he's awesome, and you have Glenn Perkins and he's awesome, and you have Casey Feen and he's awesome. If you're gonna run closers out the way that teams run closers out, and you have a guy that can basically close the seventh, a guy that can close the eighth, and a guy that can close the ninth, that's a pretty awesome problem to have.
And that's my opinion, especially as they get to the point where hopefully they're eventually competitive, is you want to just have the best players out there as good as they can be. Obviously there's development that factors into that as well, and doing what's right by the players. But if you have a bullpen that consists of whatever order, Perkins, Tonkin, Birdie, Melitakis, Zach Jones, I'm just throwing out names. Jake Reed may fit into there in a couple of years. Who knows? Logan Darnell is a long reliever and lefty. I mean, that's not a bad thing if you got a bunch of power arms that are good. So, the idea of trading a guy just because you have a few guys that might be good in a year or two just is silly.
Right. Oh, I agree. And the Twins went through the whole thing a couple years ago where it felt like they had a lot of relief prospects, and I don't even know what really happened there. It seems like they kind of all didn't make it. So maybe I'm just remembering that wrong, but I don't know. You have guys like Melitakis, you have guys like Duffy that'll fit in at some point. I'm not going to trade guys, but at the same time, I also am one that believes in start guys until they can't start anymore, and don't build a major league bullpen when you have major league failed starters that can fit into a bullpen. So
yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I can see both sides of the coin, but I don't think anywhere in the conversation it should be, well, Nick Birdie throws 100 miles an hour, so let's see what we get for Glenn Perkins.
Right.
Those two things should work completely independent of each other.
Correct.
And at this point, you simply can't trade Glenn Perkins. So, I mean, for me, it's a non-starter. But who really knows? I guess if the Twins have done some pretty crazy things, including letting a manager return after losing 90. How'd it go? 98, 97, 96 games.
96, 96, 95, wasn't it? I don't know.
Felt like
I quit paying attention to the loss numbers. It's too negative.
Felt like 120 three times. All right. So that was the question, and we kind of gave it a long answer. But my wife has posted on Facebook. She's basically asking people for names to name our son. So if anybody has a good name, my cousin just recommended the name Gardy. So we'll take suggestions.
I like it.
Sort of thing. Gardy. Goodness sakes.
I'll have to give it some thought here.
Do we want to talk about anything else, or do we want to cut her at 50? The storm that you guys watched caused the rain delay in the Twins game has now gone over my house, and I believe it is no longer raining, so that's good. We could talk about Glenn Perkins bobblehead day on Saturday.
That would be awesome.
Are you coming?
I kind of want to, but mainly just to go hang out with the September call-ups.
So come down. I'll be in line, waiting for a bobblehead.
We'll see. Hey, do we want to go through the Florida Internet or Instructional League roster, or should we just tell people that you can find it in the forums of twinsdaily.com?
No, I think we should maybe look at it quickly and pick out a couple guys that interest us the most.
All right. Are you able to see it?
I'll be there in a second.
All right. Well, just for me, I'm going to look at the pitchers, and I think they have about 24 pitchers that they're bringing. I think there's 47, 48 total players. But a couple names come out to me. Number one, JT Chargois, and I know I'm saying that wrong to those who know him. But he had Tommy John surgery, I think, last August. And he didn't come. I mean, he's been pitching bullpens and getting rehab stuff, but he didn't pitch at all. So it'll be interesting to see how he does there and what that means towards 2015.
Before we go any further, I think we might have some questions on Twins Daily.
Okay.
Um, let me just see. Yeah, we'll answer those later. But let's talk Instructional League. I just saw those for the first time. Um, okay, so that's Charzoi. You're interested in that? He was the co-closer at Rice with Tyler Duffy, and Duffy's kind of taken off, and Charzoi hasn't even pitched above. He's pitched in the Appy League, I want to say. So that's as high as he's pitched. I don't even know if he's pitched in an official game there. So their careers went two completely different ways. Um, but yeah, he's definitely one to watch. Did you have another name that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, one that we've talked about a few times, and that's Brandon Paulson. Obviously, the 6'6", 240-pounder threw a few innings at Elizabeth, and he walked a bunch, gave up some homers. But, I mean, obviously, what he did at Elizabeth isn't as important as what he kind of starts learning at Instructional League and takes with him going forward. I mean, he's all about potential, even though he's already 24.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if he could figure it out, I think because he walked 13 in 7 innings or something like that, hit some batters. Um, the two names, and these are not name. I mean, there's more. There's names that I'll watch closer, but guys that have been brought to my attention that I want to say I've been told they both have really really good curveball or sliders. Cameron Boozer and Randy LeBlanc.
Yeah.
Two separate people have told me that LeBlanc's slider when it's on is the best out of anybody that pitched in Elizabethton this year. And I've been told by other people that trying to stand in and as a lefty that you can't hit Cameron Boozer. Or no, as a righty you can't hit Cameron Boozer. So I'm just interested to see as we talk about how the Twins could have a great bullpen that you have these other guys that could come up in a specialist role and be really good. Jake Reed obviously going to the Arizona Fall League. He was the seventh member that was added late last week, I think officially earlier this morning. He's on the list, even though he'll likely not be there real long if he's headed to the Arizona Fall League.
Yeah, I guess a couple other names: Cole Stewart, Steven Gonsalves, Lewis Thorpe. Especially Thorpe and Gonsalves, I'd imagine, and probably Stewart. I don't know how much they're actually going to pitch in games. All of them probably up against innings limits. I'm sure they'd like to get Stewart a few more innings just because he did miss some time if he's healthy. But the two lefties, I got to think may not see a whole lot of game action.
Right. You want to move on to the catchers?
Yeah, I tell you, I mean, there's 6 of them, and there's some pretty good ones there, actually. I mean, Jorge Fernandez had a terrific year at Elizabeth, and he kind of hit quite a bit, whereas Brian Navarreto had some doubles. Jorge Fernandez hit for average and really had a solid year.
Did Fernandez catch much, though, this year?
Yeah, he was just catching and DHing.
Yeah, because wasn't he also going to play some outfield, and that never happened?
That's what we had heard, but yeah, I don't think he played a single game in the outfield.
Yeah, obviously Garver, Swim, and Turner are all guys that played, in A-ball this year. Navarreto, like you said, struggled with the average, but I think he's a guy that has still a very high ceiling. Rene Silva is the other guy that I'd heard really good things about, and I think he played all year in the Gulf Coast League. But neat that they can keep him around, and hopefully he can get better. I heard defensively he's really good, but obviously those reports could be not entirely accurate when that's just being judged on what they were doing in the Dominican and in low rookie ball. So those guys are all high, I would say high ceiling guys that still have a long ways to go. Obviously Turner and Garver being the two most recognizable names.
Yeah, and I mean, Alex Swim caught a few games at Cedar Rapids, but ended up playing right field pretty much every day just to get his bat in the lineup because he seemed to have 2 or 3 hits pretty much every game. So I'm curious if he'll spend more time in in instructional league catching or working in the outfield?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question.
All right, let's jump to the infielders where Nick Gordon is on the list, though, as we know, he's probably not going to be able to participate a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, another prospect goes down, and he'll be back. He'll be fine long term. Everything will be fine. He's obviously the best guy on that list. Angel Vilma is on there. His defensively, he's a stud. Nelson Molina sounds like he's going to play more third base going forward than shortstop. And then a lot of recent draft picks: Pat Kelly, Tyler Caresa, Tyler Mottner, Trey Vavra, and T.J. White were all 2014 draftees that played for Elizabethton. I believe they all did. Um, Ryan Walker, a Cedar Rapids guy. Rafael Valera, who split time between the Gulf Coast League and Fort Myers. And then Manuel Guzman, who I believe was in the Gulf Coast League as well.
Yeah, speed guy Guzman is. He had like 15 stolen bases in the GCL, which pretty short season. Obviously, they don't play all the time either, so he's definitely a speed guy. Onto the outfield, they have just 6 guys there. Although again, most likely Alex Swim's going to be able to get some time out there too. The interesting name there is Chad Christensen, because he primarily played first base for Cedar Rapids, at the same time DHing when he wasn't playing first. Although we know he can actually play pretty much anywhere on the field, and with his speed and size, he can even play center field adequately. So, not totally surprising, but kind of sticks out.
Yeah, Tyree Davis is a name that surprised me because he was a 2014 draftee high school kid that is a lot of projection, fast, can't hit a lick. So interesting to see how he'll do while facing the pitchers that are a little more advanced than he is. And then you have Tanner English and Jason Kanzler, both standout defensive guys. Zach Larson, who missed a lot of season with a hamstring deal, and Max Murphy, who is clearly the best player down there.
Clearly. I mean, honestly, I think Jason Kansas is a bit of a surprise with him getting all the way up to Fort Myers, but I mean, all of those guys, are fairly advanced players. Even Larson, being as young as he is, he missed some time this year with that hamstring injury. But I mean, that guy's a pretty advanced hitter despite being just 19.
Right. Okay. 3 questions. Let's kill it, and then we'll call it a night.
Sounds good.
This is from Lightfoot789. 2 of the 3 are. I'm just going to read this, and his questions always seem to be the more like short novels. So sometimes it's hard to argue with success and the miracle of having that in the playoffs thus far. But are you surprised that Adam Brett Walker is batting 7th in the playoff lineup this series?
Yeah, I mean that definitely stood out to me. He did both games. You kind of look at who's in front of him, and you get the speed guys at the top, and Mejia and Goodrum, and despite kind of slumping towards the end, I think Harrison was probably their best overall hitter most of the year. Dalton Hicks is a power guy, and then Stuart Turner and Max Kepler. So, I mean, honestly, I'm surprised he's up there. Hitting that low because of his power. I would think he would fit in real well right after Hicks, but maybe Minkiewicz is thinking more along the lines of allowing for Turner and Kepler to get some pitches to hit. The theory that the guys behind you can kind of protect you, and maybe Kepler is seeing more fastballs because Walker's behind him. It's also interesting. Walker had just 1 hit and 5 at bats during these 2 games against Bradenton. But in game 1, he was walked 4 times. He went 0 for 1 and walked 4 times. So, I mean, he seems to have a little bit more mature approach at the plate. I also think teams aren't pitching to him very much. So, yeah, definitely. I mean, the short answer, which is too late for that already, is yeah, I'm surprised he's hitting 7th.
He also did ask if you were surprised that Walker has more walks than anyone on either the New Britain or the AAA roster not named Devinson Romero.
That that kind of stands out. Although I did know, I mean, he was one of the top 2 or 3 guys I think in the organization in plate appearances. So just simply by sheer number of walks, it probably shouldn't surprise because he's had so many more plate appearances. But at the same time, I mean, he isn't a guy that walks. His isolated discipline is not real high, although it was much improved this year from last. So yeah, that is a kind of surprising number.
I'm going to play off your terrible joke and ask, so Walker's not a walker?
Well, he's really not a walker.
Does this revelation affect your evaluation of him at all moving forward?
No, because I mean, you combine batting average with the on base percentage, and his on base percentage is still about 310 as a high A guy. I mean, he's probably for me going to be a top 15 guy for sure. Probably right around 10, 12, somewhere in there again this year. Maybe even 15, I guess. Not really thinking about it, but I mean, if a guy's hitting and has an on-base percentage of 310 at high A, odds are that if he does get to the big leagues, he's not going to have a 300 on-base percentage. Power's there, no question about it, but pitchers also get better as you move up, and he's going to have to continue to make those adjustments as he moves up just to keep his numbers where they are in Fort Myers. And if he wants to get to that caliber where he's not striking out quite as much, he's got a lot of room for improvement. So I believe 100% in his potential. That hasn't changed at all, but there's clearly things that he still needs to work on.
Okay, last question for you. Do you think with the way that Escobar and Santana are playing that if the draft was today, the Twins would still select Nick Gordon? Not sure if they liked him that well or needed him. Would they have taken the outfielder Bat Jackson or a starting pitcher?
Well, I'll throw my short answer out there, and then you're kind of the draft guru, so I'll let you add on. Short answer, absolutely, they would have taken Nick Gordon because they love him like crazy, and you should never draft based on current big league talent or players or whatever it is. So take best player available at number 5, and I think the Twins are thrilled with Gordon.
Yeah, the reason they took Gordon is because they liked him the most. And if they would have liked Jackson more, they would have taken Jackson. Plus, Gordon then turned out a really good year when they pushed him to Elizabethton. So maybe he doesn't have the all-star MVP ceiling that people hope for, but he's still a solid pick. And by the time he's ready, we don't know that Santana's going to be able to prove himself at shortstop. We don't know that Escobar is ever going to be able to repeat what he did this year. So you can't ever draft for need in the Major League Baseball. You can't do it.
Yep.
So, regardless of how things were looking with the Twins or Red Wings or Rock Cats or injuries, however that is, you just take the guy you like the most, and that was Nick Gordon, whether that was June 6th or September 3rd.
Correct.
All right, you got anything else to say?
No, I think we should call it a show. My guest earlier informed me I need to take care of a few things here after the show, and I've got 2 blogs to write up. So we should probably call it a night and encourage people to tell people all about this show.
Spread like herpes? Are we bringing that back?
There we go.
All right. Tell your friends. Tell your friends' friends. We were live tonight for 1 hour. You can download us on iTunes later. And we will be back next Tuesday night on our regular night, hanging out and talking Twins. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we will see you next Tuesday night.